Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we are on the French auction portal Interenchère, and we're having a look at an auction by Baecque and Associates. So this is an auction based in France. I believe the selling location is Lyon in France. And this is an auction musical instruments in general, stringed and wind and anything else in between. The buyer's premium is 25%. Obviously, if you're trying to purchase something from outside of France or even outside of Europe, then check all the different fees, conditions, etc., etc. This auction is due to be live on November the 17th. It is the 14th of November today, so there's a few days to go. There's 347 lots, so quite a lot of things there. So yeah, we really should just get on with it, to be honest, because there's quite a lot to go through. Okay, so here we have a Medifino violin by JTL. Pretty standard, 3 pictures, that's fair enough. Half-size violin from Baecque. I expect a lot of French things. Another half-size violin, Medifino. Half-size violin, the Maestro. This is all fairly normal so far. Anonymous violin, Baecque, around 1920. 3/4 violin, 20th century. Another 3/4 Baecque violin. Another 3/4 Baecque. Another anonymous 3/4 violin. Just 2 pictures on that one. Another 3/4 violin. This is JTL Workshop. Another 3/4 there. Another Baecque violin. Quite a lot of 3/4 violins in this cell. Another 3/4 violin. 20th century Baecque. Mansoy's 3/4 violin. Another 3/4 violin with a Klotz label. Eastern Europe, it's saying. Another 3/4 violin from 1900. Ooh, an interesting 7/8 violin with an Armati label and a repair label from Grenoble, 1814. Very interesting back and side, Italy, 18th century, more recent French table. Curious. A few pictures on this. Somewhat interesting violin, that. French violin of the late 18th century. Signed Le Marquis de Les Oiseaux. Looks in need of a bit of work there, but nevertheless curious. Another Baecque violin, 1920. A Lebert Humbert violin there, in good condition, good figure. Another Baecque violin with a Steiner label. And a violin by Pierre Sylvestre in Lyon, 1847. So it's good quality French violin there. 20,000 to 30,000 euros is the estimate. A Grand Gérard violin made around 1800. Interesting shape. A violin made in the style of Cossin, end of the 19th century. A French violin made in Baecque around 1930. Nicholas Ain violin with a unreadable label. Violin marked in the workshop of Georges Korn. A full-size violin, kind of 1900s, tradey type thing. Ooh, a violin by Paul Bailey, made in Paris, 1887. So, 1800 to 2,000 euros there. French violin with a Maggini label, kind of early 20th century. An Albert de Blay violin. Violin from around 1900 with a Deaconet label. Violin from the Paris school, the early 19th century, 7,000 to 8,000. Has a handwritten label, PK. It's interesting. French violin, Sarasate Artist by JTL. Violin by J. Levesque in Montlucourt. A violin case with an uproot label. Looks quite a nice case actually. Violin made in Miracle around 1930 with a JB Viome label. Maggini copy, Miracle, end of the 20th century. Violin by Frère Brunet in Paris, year 1753. Two-piece back, 357. It's had some restoration. Interesting 18th century French violin. Violin from the Lebert and Burt workshop with an Albani label. Another Miracle violin by JTL. Another violin by Jean-Baptiste Collin, 1920. Violin with a Steiner label. Anonymous French violin from around 1900. Another 19th century violin there. 356 is the length of the back. There's no image for this one, but it was a French violin made circa 1800, so not quite sure about that one. Modern violin from a Cremona, year 1988. Cremona, the brand, more than the actual city. Violin made in Miracle, 20th century. Violin from Nicolas Viome's workshop, made for Paul Blanchard in Lyon. It's interesting enough. 3,000 to 3,500 there. Let's see what else we can find. Another Miracle violin, about 1930s. Another Miracle violin, 20th century. Another 20th century French violin. Another JTL violin. A luxury violin case there, apparently. 20th century violin with a Miremont label. Violin by Charles Jean-Baptiste Colin-Mazar. Violin with the Marc Le Marquis de Les Doiseaux. Mirecourt violin, Lebert workshop. Another Mirecourt violin, 1900. Violin made by Grenier in Marseille. French violin, Strad copy, 20th century. Another violin from the Lebert workshop. Mirecourt violin from about 1880. Violin made around 1900, the Carcassy label. Violin branded Nicholas Bertolini. A 20th century violin with a Gragnani label. It's quite big, 364. An Italian violin by Enrico Marchetti with the label dated 1911, authentic in all its parts. Typical example of the work. A certificate from Eric Blott from 2014. £30,000 to £35,000 is the estimate. You would have hoped they could have put some better pictures up for that money, but clearly not. An 18th century violin bearing a Marcus Aubert Napoli label. Estimates 1400 to 1500. That is a interesting looking violin from the pictures in any case. Violin made by Jules Camille Boulangot in Brussels. A violin case in rosewood. A German violin. Another German violin, but no picture. Beautiful handmade German violin by Fritz Kraus from 1948. German violin, middle of the 20th century. A Guarnerius copy violin, Germany, beginning of the 20th century. Deluxe violin case there. Slots for 4 bows. A German violin with a Klotz label, 20th century. It's one of these kind of fake Klotz ones. Some Hohner tuners and some other parts, harmonica, etc. German violin at the end of the 19th century with a Steiner label. Violin bearing Barbarus Melchior label, 1916, made in Germany. German violin around 1900 with a Galliano label. Anonymous violin from around 1900. Anonymous violin made around 1900. Another anonymous German violin from around 1900. The German violin there. Second half of the 19th century. Anonymous violin made around 1900. A German violin, Maggini label, German or Maggini copy in any case. Bird's eye back there. and the German violin, beginning of the 20th century. Another anonymous German violin from around 1900. A double case there. Lupo copy from Germany, 20th century. 3/4 violin with the Breton label. Italian violin of the Marizzi brothers with the label Fratelli Marizzi, from about 1880. Needs a little bit of work, 4,000 to 5,000 euros, the estimate. Modern violin case there. German viola. Another viola there. French Montpellier. Oh, we've lost the image there. The image doesn't seem to be working. We shall move on. Another viola by Amédée Dudouin. 3,500 to 4,000 there. Anonymous Hungarian viola, circa 1970. Another viola by Robert Kohn, Eastern Europe, circa 1960. German viola with the Klotz label, made in Germany, mid-20th century. An ebony conductor stick there. Prosper Colas violin bow, signed PC. Charles Nicholas Bazar violin bow, mounted in ebony. So a bit worse for wear. Contemporary violin bow, mounted in silver. Emile Francois Houchard violin bow. Cuneo Huri violin bow, taut model. A violin bow from Nicholas Mayer's workshop in exotic wood, mounted in nickel silver. French school violin bow, taut model. A lot of 3 bows, nickel silver. Louis Bazar violin bow stick. Louis Morizon violin bow. French school violin bow. Violin bow by Auguste Lenoble, 3,500 to 3,800 euros there. Another Louis Bazar bow. German violin bow. Another Louis Bazar bow there. It seemed to only have one picture of that one for some reason. German bow by Schaefer, Brazil. Simon School violin bow. These estimates seem quite high for some of these. Roger Lott violin bow, signed Francois Lott, 1600 to 1800. The Louis Bazar bow. And there's the bow stick, missing head by Satori, as is. Set of 5 bows, including a 3/4, as is. Bow signed Harwood in Pernambuco. 5 random bows, set of 10 bows, lots of different random stuff. Claude Thomassin's violin bow, silver mounted, at 6,000 to 7,000 there. Complete Charles Picat rosin set, a load of old rosin boxes, some people are into that I think. Handmade cello, 1900s there. A Gerhard Reinl 4/4 cello, 60s or 70s. Cello made by Nicholas Ain, of which bears the iron mark. 5,000 to 6,000 is the estimate there. It definitely looks interesting. German cello made around 1900. French cello from JTL. Cello bow from Mircore School, circa 1880. Pace old cello bow, about 1970. 19th century French double bass, made circa 1850-1870. Mircore. German style double bass bow. Two old double bass bows, one of which needs repair. Viola da Gamba bow, circa Germany, circa 1970 in Pernambuco. Conductor or fanfare baton even. Curious experimental chordophone. That looks definitely interesting. A hurdy-gurdy. Beginning of the 19th century, not many pictures there. Mandolin, an aria 1, that's all pretty standard. Another Neapolitan mandolin, Callas School. Mandolin by A. Carbonell, made in Marseille. And onwards. Strident brand mandolin, Naples. Neapolitan mandolin by E. Secchi. This is all fairly standard. This is interesting. Banduria, alto, Spain around 1900, probably Valencia. Interesting enough. American type banjo, Goldie brand, 1980s. American 5-string banjo by EKO, Italy, circa 1970. Just a banjo mandolin. Miniature guitar from around 1870-1900. Interesting Danish third lute by C.W. Skanstrom, made in Copenhagen, beginning of the 20th century. Yep, slightly interesting. Classical guitar by Castelluccio with the label, Paris around 1940. 19th century guitar made in the style of Guadagnini in Turin. Interesting. Needs a little work. Classical flamenco guitar, Estevez model. Spanish guitar by Francisco de Anastasios, 1967. Needs a bit of work. Guitar by Vito and Antonio Garganese, made in Monopoly, Italy. Interesting. Guitar by Antonio Monzino, made in Milan around 1900. Hofner guitar, made in Germany, circa 1960. A rare Martin guitar made for the firm Oliver Ditson, Boston, New York. Circa 1910, £1,200 to £1,500. That's actually quite curious. Anonymous French classical guitar, middle of the 20th century. Classical guitar of the Valencian school. Beautiful classical guitar attributed to Ricardo Sanchez, made around 1950. Spanish concert guitar by Miguel Gonzalez Abad, made in Almeria, 1971. Frameless guitar made in Germany in the 1970s. Bella Fontana's Italian classical concert guitar. Anonymous Spanish guitar made at the beginning of the 20th century. There's actually some quite interesting carving there, that's curious. De Mauro guitar. German romantic guitar at the end of the 19th century. Fairly standard. French romantic guitar at the end of the 19th century. Once again, pretty standard. Gypsy jazz guitar by Jacques Castelluccia. Paternotte gypsy jazz guitar, Matancourt, around 1960. Jazz guitar by Cousineau. Mid-20th century jazz guitar with Paul Bouchat label. Jazz guitar signed Felipe Mario in Rome. Japanese folk guitar, Ryan Brand. Kizo Suzuki folk guitar. Folk guitar from the 1970s. Star Innovation type folk guitar. Fender Stratocaster guitar, USA 1979. Vintage EKO children's guitar. A dobro square neck kind of resonator guitar from the 1970s. A Duke electric guitar made in Korea. An SG type electric guitar, 12 string and 6 string. Transfer electric guitar Performer Series USA Korea 1980s. Interesting body. Westone Spectrum MX electric guitar made in Japan 1980s. An Aria Gold Rush 2010 collector's electric guitar with built-in amplifier. Interesting. FIFA World Cup South Africa. Curious. Ernie Ball electric guitar bag with built-in Marshall amp. That's interesting. Morris bass guitar made in Japan in the 1970s. Bass guitar body with a Digitech Jamman pedal to repair. Theorbe guitar made by Antonio Mazzino in Milan, bearing his label. Interesting. So like a Theorbe guitar or harp guitar, whatever you want to call it. Small decorative harp with medieval polychrome decoration. Definitely in need of some new strings. One of these auto harp things. Whole load of harmonicas. quadruple harmonica by Hohner soprano melodica, by Hohner. I think that last thing was incorrect thing, so it's just a flute. Not quite sure what that's got mixed up a bit there. Hohner soprano melodica, chromatic bandoneon, or bandoneon. There you go. Chromatic accordion there by Mojin Frères. Della Noche diatonic accordion. Collector's accordion. Chromatic Cavagnolo accordion. A piccolo flute there in ebony, signed Tournois Atreyer. Bohème system flute by Louis Leon Joseph Lebret. Alto recorder by A. Lecomte. 6-key recorder by Lucien Lott. Soprano recorder Kung, made in Switzerland around 1980. Flute by Milleru. Noble flute there. Transverse flute by Cabaret. Buffet crampon flute. Flute by Martin Thibeville in Yamaha made flute. Yamaha professional flute. French transverse flute from the mid-19th century. German flute in ebony. Yamaha transverse flute. Transverse flute by F. Barbier. Clarinet with no picture. Lefebvre clarinet. A Noble clarinet. A beautiful clarinet case there. How lovely. Clarinet in E flat by Cousineau. Clarinet in B flat, Dolnet Lefebvre. Noble clarinet. A modern clarinet case. Clarinet in B flat by Laub. Modern oboe from Rigoutat. French military fife made around 1900. Flageolet signed by Georges Bensacon. A Cousineau tenor saxophone. Le Pierre tenor saxophone. Tenor saxophone by Henry Dolnet. Tenor saxophone by Guatreau. And a Buffet crampon tenor saxophone. Alto saxophone by JTL. Alto saxophone by Dolnet. And a Dolphy sax alto saxophone. And an alto saxophone by Yvette Schaefer. And a Henry Selmer alto saxophone. Another box for a Selmer alto saxophone. A saxophone by Truman. And a E flat horn from Cousineau. A cornet by Francois Besson. Another piston horn by Cousineau. Piston cornet by Charles Roth in Strasbourg. A small kind of horn by Dots. I'm not quite sure exactly. A small horn. Another LS brand recall horn, I suppose, or some kind of hunting horn. Curious brass booster horn. Another anonymous horn there. Small LS recall trunk. Small trumpet shaped booster horn. Interesting. Another small horn. The Trompe in D by François Perrinet. Another Trompe by Cousineau. Set of 2 trumpets there. Trumpet by J.M. Chappell. Bugle in copper and brass. Interesting little Guatro bugle. Small copper and brass bugle. Claron by Cousineau, Paris. The Claron by Cousineau. Henry Selmer Claron. SNCF brass horn. Let's see if we can get a picture. A horn of deer. Another horn there. Mid-20th century Eastern European torch. 2 pistons. Interesting. African Bambara. Buru transverse horn. African Zebu horn. A fang harp from Gabon. African Chamba from Cameroon. African Bamoon from Cameroon. African Ewe from Tonga. African Nyamwezi from Tanzania. African Hausa from Niger. African Chokwe from Angola. Good selection of stuff. African Lobi from Burkina Faso. African Senofu from Ivory Coast. Another African Senufo from the Ivory Coast. Rare and imposing transverse horn with side embouchure in relief. It's quite interesting. African Baul from Ivory Coast. That's pretty cool. Another Baul from the Ivory Coast. African Lele from DR Congo. African Luba from DR Congo. Bandia Zande from DR Congo, another kind of type of drum. African Chokwe from DR Congo. African Mangbetu from DR Congo, like a harp. African Mongo from DR Congo. African Chokwe from DR Congo. African Luga from Congo. African Lila Kuba from DR Congo. And African Chokwe from DR Congo. A lot of stuff from the Congo here. African Zande from DR Congo. African Kuba from Congo. African Congo, bass Congo, DR Congo. Double bell Kunda. Interesting. A lot of 2 African instruments. Lute Zalamolo from Niger and a harp. Kwele from Gabon. African lot of bells and cowbells. Set of 4 flutes. Bolivian Kena and 2 Chinese flutes. Rare Brazilian Barimbo used for Afro-Brazilian martial arts capoeira. Interesting. Large South American harp made in the middle of the 20th century by Jose Ariel Torres. Lot comprising 3 South American bamboo pan flutes, 2 Cuba maracasas, 2 Bolivian bamboo flutes, 1 Bolivian wooden recorder, a Sadu cowbell, India mid-20th century, Indian tabla, Dayan, first half of the 20th century, Indonesian Bali, slip drum from the Topeng Dance Theatre, that's pretty cool, small Tibetan horn of modern manufacture, I think that might have been in the last auction, anonymous Republic of Tibet, Rakang Kling horn, that's really cool looking, Regia Gling, Tibetan ceremonial oboe, mid-20th century, rare small Nepalese violin, Kathmandu Valley, 18th to 19th century. Set of 4 flutes, Nepalese, Turkish and Japanese. Traditional Chinese or Cambodian violin. A Japanese kashi bamboo kind of flute. A Maghreb oboe and fruitwood. Greek baglama of the Pegasus brand. Another rare small Greek baglama, middle of the 20th century. Russian balalaika from the 1970s. Romanian pan flute from the great manufacturer Preda. Professional Turkish oud of modern manufacture. Professional Iranian zarb. Valiha from Madagascar in bamboo. Mazzetti terracotta ocarina, very nice. Another ocarina there. Set of 3 hunting calls. Breton rosewood bombard. Rare musical saw made around 1930-1940. Handle richly decorated with tortoiseshell and white acrylic. That's kind of curious, isn't it? Brass orchestral timpani barrel, St. Jules Martin. Another orchestral timpani there. Ooh, a Columbia gramophone with records. Whole load of records, kind of ignore that. Musical instrument catalogues. Philips radio, can ignore that. Fender amp, some tuning forks, some barrels for clarinets, saxophone mouthpieces, clarinets, some other mouthpieces, we can ignore that. Mouthpieces, stamps for flutes and clarinets, etc. Other accessories here, mouthpieces, reeds, more reeds. A set of 5 Digitech brand loop station pedals, whole load of pedals, Digitech, whole load of pedals, and something else here that's Digitech with no pedals, so with no pitches even. So yeah, that has been the Baecque auction. So a whole load of different stuff, some of it quite interesting, good to see the diversity, so definitely curious. I still find that these French auctions just have too many items, like anything over kind of 250 is just a bit much, anything over 200 really it's kind of difficult to follow, but interesting auction anyway, interesting items, not the greatest pictures in the world, but could be worse, we've definitely seen worse, and some interesting items at probably some interesting prices, so definitely check it out. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested, have a look and see what you think. So until next time, ciao for now, bye. Many thanks for tuning in to the Musical Instrument Investigator. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and watch out for the next video coming soon.